Good morning and welcome to Valley Views. I'm your host, Glenn Edison. We're certainly glad to have you. And as always, we're thankful for our sponsor, BTC Fiber. And you can see these interviews on BTC Fiber's YouTube page as well as BTC Fiber's Channel 18. And today we have with us Sheldon Barker, who's the County Director and Extension Agent for Sequatchie County. Sheldon, it's good to have you.
Thank you for having me.
First, to get our interview going, let's talk about a little background just on you and why you chose this area. And I know you've had some background in this area anyway, when you were younger and in high school and so forth, and maybe even before that actually. But let's get a little background on you.
Okay, so I am from Sequatchie County, graduated from Sequatchie County High School. And when I went off to college, I thought I knew what I wanted, but having been active in 4-H and things, when I got to college, I decided maybe agriculture might be the subject I wanted to study. So I got a degree from Tennessee Tech in agriculture, general agriculture, and then went to UT Knoxville and focused on the engineering and technology side of agriculture. And somewhere along the way, some of the agents that I knew in Extension who knew me through 4-H said, "You are going to come apply to Extension." I said, "Well, I hadn't thought about it, but I will."
Yeah.
And here I am.
Now that's been how many years now?
27 total.
27 years.
20 years here in Sequatchie County.
And I know you were somewhere else
Marion
before.
County,
Marion
before I
County.
came here.
Okay. So, wow, 27 years. It doesn't seem that.
I really don't.
It seems like it's just yesterday when you started. Matter of fact, I remember when you started, but that's telling me a little bit on my age, I guess. Now, as an extension agent, what are some of the, I know you do 4-H, that's a big thing here, but I know you do other things as well. Let's talk about 4-H for just a minute and what all that involves, and then we'll get into your other programs.
Okay. Well, 4-H is our youth development program, and it is for 4th grade through 12th grade in the school system, that age group. And 4-H has this motto or slogan that it's learn by doing. So 4-Hers get to choose a project area that they have an interest in, and we facilitate the learning process and try to be hands-on. So there are a lot of opportunities. One thing that's going on, I think you're familiar with, is our chick chain project. So if they're interested in raising animals, we actually provide the 4-Her with 25 baby chickens. They're responsible for them over the course of the summer. Then come August, we'll have a show and sale where they get to show what they did. They bring 4 of their hens back to us at that time, and we sell them for those 4-Hers as a fundraiser for the project. And we buy chickens for the next round. And 25 baby chickens is a lot of little chickens running around.
Yeah.
And some responsibility. It's not something they can just do today and forget about tomorrow. It's an everyday activity. So responsibility. We ask them to keep records, which gets into the financial side. Now I know we have several 4th graders that are doing it, and that's probably not their focus, but I've got he's an upcoming senior. He's done it since 5th, 6th grade, and they're in the egg business. So, the financial, paying for the feed and selling eggs and selling chickens is a part of the process. Not be making a whole lot of money, but it's a process of learning, and maybe even look at it as a small business to kind of learn hands-on how to keep up with your expenses and your income and hopefully make money.
I know my grandson talks about the eggs. He wants to sell the eggs.
He wants to sell the eggs.
And, that's a good thing. I mean, like you said, it teaches them responsibility because there's more to it than just going out there and picking up eggs.
Right. Most folks are probably more familiar with our in-school program, which is, with COVID, been a little difficult to do as we have done in the past, where we meet 6 times in 4th, 5th, and 6th grade classrooms with different programs and activities, and we usually have a contest. The one that we really, I think, focus on and like for the 4-Hers to really participate in is our public speaking contest. And that's an opportunity for them to get in front of a group and present something to that group. And it's without props, it's not a show and tell, it's them talking kind of like we're doing here. And it's an opportunity, and it really tells. We can tell sometimes, our older 4-Hers was with a group this weekend. One of them said his project was public speaking and communications. Well, when he got in front of the group to present something their group and team had done, you could tell he'd had the experience of public speaking.
Now you also have things like 4-H camps during the summer.
We have several 4-H camps during the summer, and the sign-up periods now. In fact, some of them will be closing in the next week or so. We have a junior 4-H camp. We'll be going the last few days of June through July 2nd, whatever Friday of that, 27th to the 1st or 2nd of July. 4th, 5th, and 6th graders have an opportunity to participate in sign-up periods through toward the end of May for the sign-up day. We'll spend a week at 4-H camp in Crossville. There will be mornings as educational sessions and some educational programs, and we kind of refer to the afternoons as a free time. They get to pick and choose where they want to go with the different activities. They can go to the lake and fish. They can go to the lake and canoe and kayak. They can have some swim time. There's arts and crafts. Just a couple of 3 hours of for them to pick and choose what activities they want to participate in. And then evenings we come back together as a group, whole camp.
Well, that's nice. I know that's been going on for years.
Years, yes.
And many children have really enjoyed that experience.
It is an experience. And then we also have junior high camp. 6th graders can also choose to go to junior high camp, and it's 7th and 8th graders. And they camp, they leave Memorial Day for that camp. And then we have several specialty camps that we can send delegates to. For 6th and 7th graders, there's electric camp, which I think our quota's met on that one, but if they're interested, we can see what, the deadline I think is coming up the end of this week. So that's all focused on electricity, and I've been a couple of times as a counselor, and it's a fun 3 days in Knoxville. Academic conference, where we have 14 project areas that they spend 3 days in Knoxville focusing on the project they signed up for, and it's hands-on with our specialists and professors in Knoxville.
Oh, okay.
It's definitely an experience as well.
Pretty intense too.
Pretty intense. Well, yes, I think so. I mean,
they have it on their level, but
it's on their level, true. But we did experience the last time I went that they would do sometimes for their introductory classes in that subject on campus with their freshman students.
Oh, really? Wow.
Right. So it's pretty involved with that project area, and it's all hands-on. As I mentioned, that's kind of the philosophy of 4-H. And I could name 3 or 4 other camps. We've got a cooking class. I think it's going on now. We're planning some summer camp here in the county. And still not sure 100%, but keep an eye on our Facebook page and website for those.
And what would that be, since you mentioned that?
Well, in the past we've had a quilting class, and we called it needlecraft. They taught knitting or crocheting, and crocheting I think is actually the one they focused on, and cross stitch. And they did a little, it's called Swedish embroidery or huck weaving, where they basically weave a colored thread into the material is weaved such that it's easy to work that thread in, and you can work it in, and it's a design. And it looks simple, and when I see someone doing it, I know what you're doing, and I can see where you're going with this, or even if they missed a stitch somewhere, but I don't think I can do it.
Well, now you mentioned your Facebook page and your website. How do they find that?
The easiest way to do that is sequatchie.tennessee.edu, and that takes you to our Sequatchie County homepage on the internet. And at the bottom of that page has a link to our YouTube channel, our Facebook page, and one of our 2 Instagram pages. The second one we started first of the year, and we just haven't got it tagged to the website yet. It's geared more toward our 4-H members, and not necessarily to the parents and the general audience.
Now, aside from 4-H, what are some of the other programs your office offers for here?
Well, 4-H, Agriculture and Natural Resources, and Family and Consumer Science is the 3 program areas that we have responsibility with. So we talked a lot about our 4-H and youth development. Our family and consumer sciences is aimed at both youth and adult audiences and focus on family and financial management. We've healthy living and healthy lifestyles was a big push for the last, I don't know, 8 or 10 years. We've had classes on dealing with chronic diseases, Tai Chi for helping with mobility. And then of course with 2020, the community health and the healthy living became a real focus. We also do classes in parenting. We're court-ordered parenting classes, particularly with divorcing parents. We're the service provider for the courts in the county. And Miss Kim Davis, who's our family consumer science agent, has started doing some technology classes.
Oh.
Well, 2020, something we had talked about doing 18-19 when she first started working with us in Sequatchie County. In 2020 really showed us that there was a need. You know, to be able to pay bills online, to just stay connected with people across, your family across the country or even next door in 2020.
Right.
And to just be able to use the technology for the basics sometimes is the focus of that class. And maybe even how to order groceries online, which is something I don't know. But I mean, being able to use that technology.
Yeah, that's quite prevalent now.
Yeah,
Ordering groceries online, ordering just about anything online now is kind of a prevalent thing.
I had a cousin, and he said, I don't have to leave the house except to pick it up.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not sure that's he retired and he semi-retired and not necessarily needing to get out for everything, but he said it's awful easy just to select and move.
Yeah.
But understanding how that works and
Right.
and how to manage that is part of those classes.
Well, our world today is more technology, and when I bought my first computer, I remember I bought it more advanced than what I needed at the time because I knew in 6 months it'd grow up, it'd be old,
Yeah.
And that's the same thing with our world today. It changes so fast. We don't know what 6 months down the road is going to bring us. So we need to be prepared, and that's one way you can be prepared.
And I mentioned family consumer science. The program area I'm responsible for is agriculture and natural resources. So we work a lot with producers and farmers. Beef cattle and forages being our top commodity, but we also have row crop and growing in small fruits and vegetables. But I also answer a lot of home, lawn, and garden questions, and that's a big focus in our program. We have a master gardening program wrapping up, tomorrow, which is the end of April here, and we are looking at having other garden-related programs throughout the year, getting back to doing those in person and face-to-face. I have classes in beef cattle production throughout the year as well for our producers.
Well, that was one question I was going to ask. I know you help the farmers, and I'm sure with when you find out like new techniques or modern products, you get with the farmers and sit down and say.
We have, I wouldn't say monthly, but there is a regular scheduled course of classes, and we have, of course, technology allows us to provide information as well through newsletters and other media sources. So yes, we do things and learn about things, then it can be passed on. We'll back up a step real quick. The University of Tennessee Extension is, as the name implies, an extension of the University of Tennessee, which is a land-grant university charged with agriculture and actually industrial research. There is a component of the university within the Institute of Agriculture, which is the umbrella, that conducts research on farm, and they have research stations across the state. As they learn things, as they develop recommendations after 3, 4, 5 years of research, they get passed to us, and it's our responsibility to share those with the folks who would be able to use that information. And that applies with our family consumer sciences. We have specialists in Knoxville who do research and help find the latest information on topics of need and pass that down to the agents to get it to the people who will be able to use and actually be able to do something with that research and information.
Because it actually boils down to more production or better production.
But, more production, better production, but we spend a lot of time on just making it financially viable. And we can pour a lot of inputs into a product and get something good, but it may cost you more than the product is actually valued. So it becomes economics as well, and being able to make the input decisions to have a good product and make money, or at least pay for itself.
Yeah, and I know, at least I've read, I won't say that I know, but I've read up on some of it, where some of the larger firms, especially out in West Tennessee that I've seen, those are the ones I've seen, where a lot of their production is automated through a lot of technology. And
my brother has worked in that field, and their equipment, they can set it in the field, point the nose of the tractor in the right direction. The tractor will take itself across the field. Gets to the end, it tells the driver it needs to turn it around and reset it, and it will take itself back across the field the other direction, whether it be fertilizing, planting, or harvesting. So yes, it's highly automated.
Yeah,
and that equipment actually also knows what to put on that square of land that it's on at that moment. So if it's a highly productive area, it may be planting more seed per acre than it would in a less fertile part of the field, or it might put more fertilizer on the less fertile part. If it's a weedier part of the field, it knows that it needs to up the rates for the weed control. So all this is programmed in, and the equipment knows what to put where.
And that just amazes me, because I remember seeing my grandfather when he would have his garden. He just had the little old plow with the little basically the sharp end, and at the end, and that's how he plowed his field. And he just went on all the years his experience, and didn't have that technology.
70 years ago, there were still farmers in this county that were just beginning to use tractors. Let alone maybe 80 years. Tractors were a new thing, and now that equipment is, in the last 10, 15, 20 years anyway, has really progressed in that technology.
Yeah, and we have a lot. I know we have a lot of cattle farms in the area, but we also have a lot of farmers who grow a lot of corn and wheat, hay, and various other things.
The largest commodity is still beef cattle. Row crops is not as big a component as it is once you cross the plateau and get into Middle and West Tennessee, but we do have some row crop.
And the thing about farming as well is, I'm sure most people know that it's not a cheap business. I mean, you got a lot of time, you got equipment, and then not like the beef cattle, you got expense in the cattle.
Right. It is. People move in and think about wanting to farm, and it is a capital investment. You got investment in the land as well. So to be able to farm has a significant capital investment.
Right, and it's a daily business. You can't do it when you feel like it.
Right. There's something going on all the time. Yeah. Even on rainy days.
Yeah. Excuse me. Now, you mentioned earlier you answer questions. Sometimes you get calls. That's probably from just local people maybe that are concerned about certain maybe flowers or maybe their own little garden.
Right. And that's one of the services we provide, is to be able to consult with landowners, whether they're a small flower garden or hundreds of acres of crops, to be able to get the results that they want. And we help them solve insect and disease problems. We can identify weeds. We can even make recommendations for varieties to grow in the area. So if you're planting a garden, there's certain varieties that might do better in this part of the state, particularly with perennial fruit crops.
Right.
That tends to be where we have a lot more questions regarding varieties than we would which tomatoes should I grow.
Yeah.
But even then, your choice of tomatoes might vary depending on what you like in tomatoes, because everybody has a different taste. But also, everybody thinks that says heirlooms. Well, heirlooms can be a good choice, but they may also be a little more susceptible to disease or insect pressure. So there's other varieties that might have the same taste, same look as the tomato, but might have a more resistance to a disease. So we can make those recommendations. You know, a lot of people come carrying in and say, "What's this weed?" or carrying a jar of bugs.
Yeah.
Want to know how to identify them. Thing is, I may not be able to identify them. I may not be able to say that is and give you the exact name, but I'm connected to the university, and we have a process that we can find answers. So I'm not the expert in every topic that comes in, but I'm connected to the experts on those topics and get you the answers very, very quickly.
Well, that's good, because I mean, even myself, my wife and I, we've grown some things, and sometimes we've had good results and sometimes not. So if that were the case, you would be able to, if I called you and said, "Hey, this didn't pan out."
Didn't pan out. Well, first question would be, what was you trying to grow? And second question is, did you ever have a soil test? I mean, that may sound cliche-ish from our perspective, because we say that to everyone. The first thing we want to know is the soil right for the crop you're trying to grow. It costs you $15 plus postage to get the results, but it will tell you if the nutrients is in the soil and whether or not the plant's going to be able to utilize those nutrients. Once we know the answer to that question, then the next thing we will start looking at is what the history of that site, what was grown there before, and come back to the varieties you may have selected, and just work through the steps of answering questions. But usually the first thing I say is, let's get a soil test and just make sure the soil's right for that crop.
Well, that's interesting, because I wasn't aware of that, so that's a good.
Good to know. I mean, we can, in particular with fertilizer prices on our producers, they can come in and actually know what they need to apply, the exact rates to get the results that they want, and not just guess at the amount. And they might need less fertilizer than they would if they were guessing, or they may not need fertilizer at all.
Right.
Or they might need a little more of one thing or the other.
Right. You might get the wrong thing.
You might get the wrong thing
and
not help at all.
Yeah.
Right.
Or you can either with the fertilizer, you can overdo and actually kill the crops.
You can actually overdoing it can also have some long-term impact on that crop. I mean, you can build the levels in the soil to the point the plant just says, nope, it's just, I'm not going to want to grow here.
Well, that's interesting, and because there's a lot to it. So people need to, if they do have questions, give you a call.
Give me a call, and you could ask me what's the best advice you can do at this time of the year. That's a typical question I get, and it's like, well, let's sit down and talk about your specific situation, because if you're here and first somebody gives me a call on the phone and says, I've got a problem with my lawn or garden, but the first question is, well, where are you in the county? Because if they're on the plateau, that might be one set of things to consider. If they're in the valley, it's different, because different types of soil, different environments, and it can be colder or one place or the other. When we get frost in the valley, sometimes with cold air settling in, they might not see on the plateau, and maybe the wind was blowing up there and it just didn't frost.
Yeah.
So just knowing where they are in the county can help me figure out what direction we need to think in solving their problem, or doing what they need to do.
That's interesting, because I probably a lot of citizens probably wouldn't think about that. They just think, well, I can just go out here and hold the ground and plant, and
And a lot of times that may actually get you the results you want, but a lot of times it don't. And if you're in a housing, around your house, or landscape and garden, that is less likely just to go out and plant something, less likely to get results, because that site's been highly disturbed in the course of building that house.
Right.
And the effects of that disturbance can show up sometimes 5-10 years later. Soil's compacted with heavy equipment and traffic. They've leveled the ground, and there may not be as much topsoil there, or lost organic matter. So if it's in a area where a house has been built, then it's a good idea to probably think about what you want to do in landscaping and consider the soil types.
Yeah.
Some of our fields, in crop fields, it's been in production for a while, less disturbed and less likely to have those issues. But over time, soil kind of, I guess the right way to put it is revert back to its natural state.
Uh-huh.
And the soils in the county can vary a little depending on the available phosphorus, potassium, and other nutrients in its natural setting. So you may have to amend the soil
adjust
to
a different crop.
Usually amending, no matter what crop is necessary to bring that nutrient level back to the desired level. And naturally, soils in this area tend to be acidic, which is great for pines and blueberries.
Yeah.
But not great for tomatoes.
Yeah.
So you may, if nothing else, a little lime to bring the pH up where the plant will grow.
And you kind of touched on this about the difference between maybe the plateau and the valley, but I'm sure there's a lot of different advice you can give when the seasons change about how to protect what you have from the winter and the colder months and maybe the frost and stuff in the spring.
And then the hot, dry summers.
Yeah, because we have them all.
We have them all. And a lot of our insect pests in lawns and gardens and even in agriculture are seasonal.
Uh-huh.
We can kind of gauge when they're going to be a problem based on the weather and the time of the year. So weeds, the first question is, well, when did it bloom? Because if it's blooming now, it's typically a cool season plant, which means it germinated in October.
Yeah.
Back in the fall. Well, October, November would have been the time to address the problem, not when it's blooming.
Right.
And we've got several weeds that would be in your lawn and garden that's starting to germinate now that will start blooming June, July, August. That now's the time to think about those weeds. I hate to say this, but my number one answer for lawns, for flower beds in your garden for weeding, is just go pull the weed when you see it.
Yeah.
Just stay ahead of them.
Yeah.
Your choices of really doing a serious chemical application are pretty limited in those settings.
Well, now I know it's been pretty popular the past few years of these above ground gardens.
Raised beds.
Raised beds.
They are, if you have a space that you want to garden, unless you're growing okra and corn and something that might be tall, I would seriously consider them. It costs you a little up front, but you have a lot more control over the media it's growing in. You can work them a lot easier. Because they're raised up, you don't have to get down on the ground to reach the weeds and harvest. A lot better control over weeds because you can densely plant in those raised beds and suppress the weeds. A raised bed garden is really a good option, and you don't have to worry about some of the things we just talked about. It's the soil, the right type of soil. It's the soil fertility right, because you're controlling all that as you build the bed.
I know we built one a couple of years ago, and when I got to the store where I was going to buy the dirt and things for it, it had it was a raised bed dirt type that you could use specifically for raised beds. I had a fertilizer in it and had and I thought that I'd not seen that, but I guess that's been something that's kind of come along. As the raised beds have come along.
And if you compost, then you're creating your own media. And I talked about soil testing. We have a process. It's a little more extensive than soil because of the amount of organic matter that's in these compost and media that you can put in raised beds. Well, we can test the media in your raised bed. It's $30 or $35 for the test, but it will give you the same basic results that the soil test would, and say, okay, you might need a little more of this fertilizer as opposed to that fertilizer, and you can maintain your bed. And then after probably, and it may vary depending on how you manage your bed, but you may have to replace that media at some point in the future. But you can maintain for a few years depending on the crops you're growing.
Right, and we've had pretty good luck with that, and of course I had bugs on my tomatoes. They were terrible, They were eating my tomatoes more than I was eating them. But we really like that, and we're going to add to that. And I've seen quite a few in the area, raised beds. So
it's the, I think if you're wanting to grow tomatoes, peppers, squash, some of the lower growing crops, that's definitely a way to grow it. It's definitely a way to grow with some of the carrots, radishes. Let's be honest with you, the clay soils in the valley is just pretty hard on root crops.
Yeah.
And spinach and other greens, those are really a good way to manage them. And the cool thing about a raised bed too is with a little thinking, you can put a cover over it and make it a mini greenhouse to get you through the first maybe a couple of weeks of October, or start right now. If you're going to be planting in a garden, it's time to start thinking about planting the warm season crops. I can wait another week or two if I was on the plateau, but the end of April, first week or two of May is when people start thinking tomatoes, peppers, those summer crops. Well, if you had them in a raised bed that you could cover, keep them warm on these cool nights, you might get a week or two head start on your neighbor on your tomato.
Well, that's interesting.
And we've got publications on how to do that.
Oh, okay. Well, I might be down there to see you then.
Well, sequatchie.tennessee.edu, and up in the upper right-hand corner it says publications. You click on that, put in gardening, and you'll get pages of garden-related publications to answer questions.
Well,
so
that's
it's pretty easy to find.
Well, is there anything we haven't covered today that you'd like to go over?
I could talk all day on any of the topics on gardening we've talked about, and just what we do in general. I mean, we just scratched the surface on some of our programs and activities, that we do in Extension. So the best thing to do is just follow us on Facebook, and that's where a lot of the immediate things, that appears on our Facebook page. And then, of course, our website has a lot of access to publications and questions and answers to questions on lawns, gardens, family and consumer science, 4-H program.
Well, that's interesting. And so if they have any questions, they can always call.
They can always call.
Go to sequatchie.edu.
Sequatchie.Tennessee, spell out both Sequatchie and Tennessee.edu.
Oh, okay.
That's our website.
All right, well, good.
It's pretty easy to remember. So
yeah.
It's a lot of typing, but it's a pretty easy to remember.
Well, I like the easy stuff. As I get older, I enjoy that. Well, good. It's great. It's been good to have you, and I appreciate you being here.
Asking me to be a part of this.
Great. And folks, again, you can see our interview on BTC Fiber's YouTube page as well as BTC Fiber's Channel 18. And until next time, have a great day. Hey everybody, this is Glenn Edison from Valley Views. We appreciate you watching our shows, and we would like for you to like, share, and follow us on Facebook, as well as like and subscribe to our YouTube page.
Brought to you by Bledsoe Telephone Cooperative, your full-service telecommunications provider right here in the Sequatchie Valley.